Jax's revenge domain.
2 hours and 17 minutes. That's exactly how long Bradley Hartwell stood there screaming at me in the production meeting while 25 people watched. I counted every single minute on that old Timex wall clock behind his head while my team, my crew, even the new kid who started Monday just stared. Nobody said a word when he slammed his hand on the metal table so hard my coffee mug jumped. Nobody moved when he called me a dinosaur and said I was the biggest obstacle to progress in company history. The quarterly numbers were down 3.8% in my section. According to Bradley, that meant I deserved a public execution. When he finally stopped yelling, my work shirt was soaked with sweat under my jacket. The silence felt heavy, like when a machine stops running and you know something's broken. Then I heard my own voice, steady as a machine calibration. "Anything else, sir?" He actually looked surprised, like he expected me to blow up or walk out or both. "No," he finally said. "Just fix it." I nodded, picked up my clipboard, and walked out without rushing. 25 pairs of eyes followed me to the door. I didn't brake until I got to my truck in the employee lot. Then I pounded that steering wheel until my hands hurt. That was Tuesday, October 15th, the day I decided Bradley Hartwell needed to lose everything. I'm Marcus Thompson, 51 years old, been plant supervisor at Hartwell Manufacturing for 22 years. Started on the floor making $12 an hour, worked my way up through every department. People who know me would say I'm steady, reliable, the guy who shows up early and stays late when something needs fixing. My ex-wife used to call me stubborn, which means I don't quit when things get tough. Here's the thing about plant guys like me. We know how everything connects. We see the patterns. We understand when something's throwing the whole place out of balance. And Bradley Hartwell was doing exactly that. Bradley showed up 8 months ago as our new operations director. 38 years old, MBA from Ohio State, the kind of guy who uses words like synergy and optimization in every sentence. Came from some consulting firm, never spent a day on an actual production floor. Corporate brought him in to modernize operations and improve efficiency metrics. Translation, cut costs and make the spreadsheets look good. First week, he called me into his office. Nice enough conversation, told me he valued my experience and looked forward to working together, but something felt off. The way he looked at my hands, checked out my work clothes, asked how much formal education I had, like he was sizing me up for something. For 6 months, things stayed civil. Bradley would walk the floor with his tablet, taking notes, asking questions about what he called legacy processes. My guys started calling him clipboard behind his back. He'd nod and smile when I explained why we did things certain ways, but I could see it in his eyes. He thought we were all just dumb factory workers who didn't understand modern business. Then came the changes. New safety protocols that looked good on paper but made no sense on the floor. Quality control procedures that slowed everything down. Maintenance schedules that ignored 20 years of equipment knowledge. Every time I tried to explain why something wouldn't work, Bradley would give me that patient smile and talk about resistance to change or legacy thinking. The breaking point was the Morrison account. We'd been making precision parts for Morrison Automotive for 15 years. They trusted us because we knew their specs, understood their deadlines, had relationships with their engineers. When their big order came in, I told Bradley we needed overtime authorization for my team. We had the experience, knew exactly how to handle it. Bradley said no. Instead, he hired temporary workers at $80 an hour and put them on 12-hour shifts to maximize efficiency. I warned him temp workers couldn't handle Morrison's precision requirements. He told me I was being unnecessarily negative about workforce optimization. 2 weeks later, Morrison rejected 40% of the shipment. Quality issues, dimensional problems, surface finish defects. Exactly what I'd predicted. Cost us $180,000 and nearly lost the account. But somehow that became my fault. My section, my responsibility, my failure to adapt to new methodologies. That's when the targeting started. Every mistake got amplified. Every suggestion got dismissed. Bradley began excluding me from planning meetings, then acting surprised when my section couldn't meet deadlines he'd set without my input. He'd walk through my area with corporate visitors, pointing out inefficiencies and outdated practices. My guys started avoiding eye contact when he came around. The humiliation meeting was supposed to be about quarterly performance. Bradley had set it up as a department review, invited supervisors from every section. What I didn't know was that he'd already decided to make an example of me. He started with charts, production graphs, efficiency metrics, cost analyses, all designed to show how my section was dragging down overall plant performance. Then he moved to personal attacks. Called me set in my ways, resistant to innovation, a barrier to progress. Said maybe it was time for fresh leadership in my department. For 2 hours and 17 minutes, he systematically destroyed my reputation in front of people I'd worked with for decades. Guys who'd learned their trade from me, who'd come to me when they had problems, who'd trusted me to have their backs. And I just stood there and took it. But here's what Bradley didn't know. While he was busy humiliating me, I'd been documenting everything. Every safety shortcut he'd approved. Every quality standard he'd relaxed. Every maintenance schedule he'd ignored to hit his precious efficiency numbers. See, when you've been in manufacturing as long as I have, you develop instincts. You keep records. Not because you're planning anything, but because that's how you protect yourself and your people. And Bradley had been making a lot of decisions that looked good on quarterly reports but created serious problems on the floor, like the maintenance deferrals. Bradley had pushed back scheduled maintenance on our main hydraulic press to save $15,000 in downtime costs. I documented my objections, but he overruled me. 3 weeks later, a seal failed and hydraulic fluid sprayed across the work area. Nobody got hurt, but it could have been bad, really bad, or the ventilation system. Bradley cut the filter replacement schedule in half to reduce operating costs. I'd measured the air quality, documented the increase in particulate levels, filed reports that got ignored. Our guys were breathing that stuff every day. Then there were the temp worker incidents. 5 safety violations in 2 months. 2 minor injuries that could have been serious. All because Bradley insisted on using inexperienced workers instead of paying overtime to trained employees. I had every incident report, every safety meeting minute, every email where I'd raised concerns. After the humiliation meeting, I went home and spread all my documentation across the kitchen table. 22 years of knowing how to cover yourself in a manufacturing environment. Every email saved, every report filed, every safety concern documented, and a pattern started emerging that even I hadn't fully seen before. Bradley wasn't just cutting corners. He was creating serious safety hazards while manipulating the reporting to hide it. OSHA violations that could shut us down. Environmental issues that could trigger federal investigations. Workers' comp claims that were getting buried. All to make his quarterly numbers look good. I made a decision that night. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about the 150 people working in that plant. Good people with families, mortgages, kids in college, people who depended on their jobs and deserved to work in a safe environment. First, I needed allies, but not the obvious ones. I needed people Bradley would never suspect, people with access to information he didn't know they had. I started with Angela Murphy, our administrative coordinator. Angela had been there 18 years, knew where every document was filed, had access to all the corporate reporting systems. She'd also been watching Bradley's changes with the same concern I had. I found her in the break room Thursday morning. "Angela," I said, "you got a minute to talk?" She looked around, made sure we were alone. "If this is about Tuesday's meeting, Marcus." "I'm sorry, that was wrong." I nodded. "It was, but that's not why I want to talk. I need to ask you something, and you can say no. I'll understand. What is it?" "I think Bradley's creating safety problems to hit his numbers, and I think if something bad happens, good people are going to get hurt. I've got documentation on my end, but I need someone who can access the corporate reporting side." Angela was quiet for a long moment. "What kind of documentation?" "The kind that might interest OSHA." She studied my face. "How serious are we talking?" "Serious enough that I'm willing to risk everything to stop it." Angela nodded slowly. "I've been wondering when someone was going to say something. Some of the reports I've been filing don't match what I see on the floor. Will you help?" "Tell me what you need." Next was Jimmy Rodriguez, senior mechanic with 28 years on the floor. Jimmy knew every machine in the plant, had maintained equipment through 3 different management teams, was respected by everyone from new hires to senior staff. If Jimmy said something was dangerous, people listened. I caught him during shift change. "Jimmy, walk with me." We headed toward the far end of the plant, away from the offices. "That hydraulic incident last month," I said. "You filed the repair report, right?" Jimmy nodded. "Seal failure. Could have seen it coming if they'd let us do the scheduled maintenance. You document that in your report?" "Course I did. Been doing this too long not to cover myself." "What if I told you that incident was just one of several safety issues that are getting buried in the reporting?" Jimmy stopped walking. "I'd say I already know that. Question is, what are you planning to do about it? Something that might get me fired, but might also save someone's life." Jimmy looked at me hard. "You got my attention." The third ally was unexpected. Tank Williams, our union shop steward, came to me. Tank had been watching the changes too, fielding complaints from workers about safety concerns and increased accident rates. He'd been trying to work through official channels, but his grievances were getting buried in bureaucracy. "Marcus," he said, cornering me in my office Friday afternoon, "I hear you've been asking questions about safety documentation." I kept my face neutral. People talk. They do. And what they're saying is that maybe someone's finally ready to do something about the problems we've been seeing. "What kind of problems?" Tank closed the door. "The kind that could get people killed. The kind that are happening because some MBA thinks he knows more about running a plant than people who've been doing it for decades." He leaned forward. "If you're putting something together, I want it, and the union's been documenting issues too. With my team in place, we spent the next 2 weeks building a comprehensive case." Angela accessed corporate safety reports and found discrepancies between what was being reported to headquarters and what was actually happening on the floor. Jimmy compiled maintenance records showing systematic deferrals of critical safety procedures. Tank gathered worker incident reports that had been downgraded or ignored. What we found was worse than I'd expected. Bradley hadn't just been cutting corners, he'd been actively falsifying safety reports, manipulating incident classifications to avoid OSHA reporting requirements, and hiding equipment problems that posed serious risks to worker safety. The smoking gun came from an unexpected source. While reviewing environmental compliance records, Angela discovered that Bradley had been authorizing disposal of chemical waste through a contractor that wasn't properly licensed. The cost savings looked good on his budget, but the environmental violations could result in massive fines and criminal charges. We also found evidence of financial irregularities. Bradley had been inflating cost savings by deferring maintenance and safety improvements, then taking credit for the efficiency improvements in his performance reviews. Meanwhile, the deferred costs were being buried in other budget categories, making the problem someone else's responsibility down the line. But we needed more than documentation. We needed someone with the authority and credibility to act on what we'd found. That's when Tank suggested his brother-in-law, Pete Morrison, who worked as a safety inspector for OSHA's regional office. "Pete's been looking for a case like this," Tank told us. "Manufacturing facility that's cutting safety corners to improve profit margins. If we can get him the right documentation, he can trigger a full investigation." The following Monday, Bradley called another production meeting. This time, it was supposed to be a celebration of improved quarterly numbers. His efficiency improvements had reduced costs by 12%, and he wanted to make sure everyone understood how his modern management techniques were transforming the operation. I sat in that meeting listening to Bradley take credit for improvements that had come at the expense of worker safety and equipment reliability. Watching him smile as he presented charts showing cost reductions that represented deferred maintenance, delayed safety improvements, and environmental shortcuts, and I realized this was my moment. When Bradley finished his presentation and asked for questions, I stood up. "I have one," I said. "How long do you think these cost savings will last when OSHA finds out about the safety violations you've been covering up?" The room went dead silent. Bradley's face went white, then red. "I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus, but if you have concerns about safety procedures, we can discuss them privately. Actually, I think we should discuss them right here in front of everyone whose safety you've been compromising." I opened my folder and pulled out the documentation, like the hydraulic press maintenance you deferred that nearly injured 3 workers last month, or the ventilation filters you stopped replacing to save money while our people breathe contaminated air, or the unlicensed waste disposal contractor you've been using to hide environmental violations. Bradley stood up, his voice shaking. "This meeting is over." "Marcus, my office, now." "No," I said calmly. "This meeting continues until everyone in this room understands what's been happening, because in about an hour, OSHA inspectors are going to be walking through that door with a warrant. And when they start asking questions, I want everyone to know exactly why they're here. The rest happened fast." Bradley tried to have me escorted out, but Tank and Jimmy stood with me. Angela started pulling files from her briefcase, spreading documentation across the table. Other supervisors began asking questions, demanding to see the safety reports, wanting to know about the environmental violations. Within 2 hours, OSHA inspectors arrived with EPA representatives and state environmental officials. They spent the next 3 days going through our facility with microscopes, interviewing workers, reviewing records, documenting violations. Bradley spent most of that time in conference calls with corporate lawyers. Friday afternoon, corporate called an emergency meeting. The CEO, legal counsel, and human resources flew in from Detroit. They'd seen the preliminary OSHA report. The fines alone would be in the hundreds of thousands. The environmental violations could trigger criminal charges. The safety issues created massive liability exposure. Bradley was terminated that afternoon. Fired for cause, no severance, no golden parachute. Corporate also announced a complete safety audit of all facilities, new environmental compliance procedures, and a $2 million investment in equipment upgrades and safety improvements at our plant. They offered me Bradley's position. Operations Director, significant raise, full authority over plant operations with a mandate to implement proper safety and maintenance procedures. I accepted, but with conditions. Jimmy Rodriguez became maintenance supervisor with proper staffing and budget. Angela Murphy became plant administrator with authority over all reporting and documentation. Tank Williams got a formal role in safety oversight with direct access to corporate headquarters. 6 months later, our plant is running better than it has in years. Production is up, safety incidents are down, and worker morale has completely turned around. We're meeting all our delivery commitments, our quality ratings have improved, and we've actually reduced costs through proper maintenance and efficient operations rather than dangerous shortcuts. The Morrison account came back when their engineers visited and saw the improvements we'd made. They not only renewed their contract, but increased their orders by 30%. Turns out, when you prioritize quality and safety, customers notice. My guys respect me in a way they never did before. Not just as their supervisor, but as someone who was willing to risk everything to protect them. Angela told me that applications for plant positions have tripled since word got out about what happened. People want to work for a company that actually cares about employee safety. Tank's union grievances have dropped to almost zero. When workers see that management takes safety seriously and responds to concerns promptly, they don't need to file complaints. The whole atmosphere has changed. Bradley, last I heard, he was trying to find work in a completely different industry. Word travels fast in manufacturing circles, especially about executives who compromise worker safety for profit margins. His name is poison in this business now. But here's the thing that still gets to me. None of this should have been necessary. If corporate had been paying attention, if they'd listened to the concerns we'd been raising for months, if they'd prioritized worker safety over quarterly profits from the beginning, Bradley never would have been able to create these problems. That's the real problem with corporate culture today. Too many companies promote people based on degrees and buzzwords instead of actual experience and results. They bring in these MBA types who've never worked a day on a production floor, give them authority over people who've been doing the job for decades, then act surprised when things go wrong. But this story isn't really about corporate dysfunction. It's about what happens when ordinary people decide they've had enough and are willing to take risks to protect what matters. Because that's what this was really about. Not revenge, not getting back at Bradley for humiliating me. It was about accountability. It was about protecting 150 people who trusted me to have their backs. See, the thing about manufacturing is that it's built on trust. Workers trust their supervisors to keep them safe. Supervisors trust management to provide the resources and support they need. Management is supposed to trust that the people on the floor know what they're talking about when they raise concerns. When that trust breaks down, people get hurt, sometimes killed. Bradley broke that trust. He put profits ahead of people, efficiency metrics ahead of worker safety. He thought he could manipulate the numbers and nobody would notice. What he didn't understand is that you can't fake experience. You can't spreadsheet your way around 20 years of equipment knowledge, and you definitely can't intimidate people who've been through plant shutdowns, economic downturns, and corporate reorganizations. The documentation was crucial, sure. Having Angela's access to corporate records, Jimmy's maintenance expertise, Tank's union connections, all of that mattered. But what really made the difference was that we stuck together. We didn't let Bradley divide us or intimidate us into silence. We looked out for each other the way plant workers always have. I've learned something important from all this. Individual courage only goes so far. Real change happens when people work together, when they're willing to risk their own comfort to protect others. Bradley could have destroyed my career if I'd acted alone, but when Angela, Jimmy, Tank, and the others stood with me, he couldn't touch any of us. The plant is a different place now. Not perfect, no workplace ever is, but better, safer, more honest. People trust that if they raise a concern, someone will listen and take action. They know that experience and knowledge are valued, not dismissed. They see that doing the right thing matters more than hitting quarterly targets, and the results speak for themselves. Better safety record, higher quality, improved productivity, increased customer satisfaction. Turns out that when you treat workers with respect and prioritize their well-being, everything else falls into place. Who would have thought? Bradley probably still doesn't understand what happened to him. In his mind, he was just implementing modern business practices, optimizing operations for maximum efficiency. He'd probably tell you he was the victim of a conspiracy by old-school workers who couldn't adapt to change. That's fine with me. Let him think whatever helps him sleep at night. The truth is simpler. He underestimated the intelligence and determination of the people he was trying to push around. He thought having an MBA meant he was smarter than guys like me and Jimmy, who've spent our careers learning our trades. He believed his own rhetoric about legacy thinking and resistance to change. What he never understood is that there's a difference between being resistant to change and being resistant to stupid change. We weren't opposed to improvement. We were opposed to changes that made things worse while looking good on paper. We weren't against efficiency. We were against efficiency that came at the expense of safety and quality. Most importantly, he never grasped that the people working in that plant weren't just employees to be managed. We were a community. We looked out for each other's families, celebrated each other's successes, supported each other through hard times. When he attacked one of us, he attacked all of us. And eventually we responded. The old Timex on the wall is still keeping perfect time, still marking the minutes and hours that define our working lives. But now those hours are spent in a place where people feel valued and protected, where experience matters as much as education, where doing the right thing counts for more than hitting the numbers. Sometimes I look at that clock and remember those 2 hours and 17 minutes when Bradley tried to destroy my reputation in front of my colleagues. The humiliation, the powerlessness, the rage I felt afterward, but mostly I remember what came next. The decision to fight back, not just for myself, but for everyone working in that plant. The slow, careful process of building a case and gathering allies. The moment when we finally had enough evidence to take action. That's when I learned something important about time. It's not just about minutes and hours on a clock. It's about what you do with those minutes and hours, how you choose to spend them, whether you use them to build something better or just count them until quitting time. I used mine to build something better. And every day when I look at that old Timex, I'm reminded that time well spent is never wasted. If you're dealing with a boss who thinks credentials matter more than competence, who puts profits ahead of people, who doesn't respect the experience and knowledge of the workers under him, remember this. Document everything. Find allies who share your concerns. Don't let yourself be intimidated or isolated. And most importantly, understand that real change takes time and courage, but it's possible when good people decide they've had enough. Sometimes the person who looks down on you the most is the one who understands the least about what really matters. Bradley thought he could push us around because we didn't have fancy degrees. What he didn't realize was that 22 years of plant experience taught me things no business school ever could. Like how to recognize real problems, how to build trust with your team, and how to document everything you need to protect the people counting on you. In the end, that knowledge was worth more than all his MBA training combined.